beautiful camel in Dubai. This is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
Morning, hello and welcome to Newsday on the BBC World Service with Bola Mosuro and Lawrence Pollard.
At least 12 is the death toll reported from Lagos after the shooting of protesters, which is, of course, our top story. We have a response from the government on the way. The Minister of Police tries to answer some of the questions of how it can have happened.
I cannot say actually who is involved in the shooting. There could be some miscreants who are having guns shooting people here and there.
Days from the big vote in the US, we hear more allegations of foreign interference in the polls, and they're really confusing. One of the first to raise the alarm last time round joins us to explain.
Also, Purdue Pharma, one of the largest drug companies implicated in America's opioid epidemic, reaches a multi-billion dollar settlement with federal authorities, and the scientists using a car to drive over a beetle in the interest of science.
Hello, this is Danielle Yarowiecka with the BBC News. The former US President Barack Obama has sharply criticised Donald Trump in his first campaign speech in support of the Democratic Party presidential candidate Joe Biden. Speaking in Philadelphia, Mr. Obama accused the president of lying every day. At his rally in North Carolina, Donald Trump said Mr. Obama had campaigned hard for Hillary Clinton at the last election, but the result was her defeat.
There was nobody that campaigned harder for crooked Hillary Clinton than Obama, right? He was all over the place. He said he will not be our president. But before that he said he will not run. He didn't know me. Then I ran. Then he said he will not get the nomination. Then I got the nomination. Then he said he will not be our president. Then I won.
The US Director of National Intelligence says Iran and Russia have both attempted to interfere in the forthcoming presidential election. David Willis has more.
John Ratcliffe said Russia and Iran had both obtained information about US voters and that a group based in Iran had sent spoof emails designed to intimidate voters. He said registered Democrats had received emails in the name of an armed militia group known as the Proud Boys, which warned that if the recipients didn't vote for President Trump, then members of the group would come after them. Mr. Ratcliffe also said that Iran had distributed a video which implied that fraudulent ballots were in distribution, some sent from overseas. The intention being, he said, to sow chaos and undermine confidence in American democracy.
The British government says it plans to introduce tougher immigration controls on people from the European Union in January, after the UK ends its transitional arrangement with the bloc. The Home Office says Border Force staff will be told to turn away any EU citizen who has spent a year in prison, as well as those who have committed non-custodial offences in the previous year. The Czech Republic is beginning a second lockdown in an attempt to prevent the country's hospitals becoming overwhelmed by the rising number of new COVID-19 cases. At an emergency meeting late on Wednesday, Prime Minister Andrej Babiš said that without urgent action, the healthcare system would collapse within 3 weeks. Rob Cameron reports from Prague.
Each morning, Czechs wake up to a situation that's just a little bit bleaker than the day before. This morning, they're struggling with yet more restrictions. Travel to and from work is permitted, as is shopping for food and other essentials, and also exercise, but that's about the limit of their freedom of movement. Meanwhile, the number of deaths so far in October has now exceeded the total for the previous 7 months put together.
World News from the BBC. The US Defense Department has approved arms sales to Taiwan worth nearly $2 billion in a move that is likely to further exacerbate tensions with China. In a notification to the US Congress, the Pentagon said the deal would comprise 3 weapon systems, including sensors, artillery and rocket launchers. The Organization of American States says the election in Bolivia was free and fair, and that the victory of the socialist presidential contender Luis Arce is legitimate. Official results from Sunday's election gave Mr. Arce nearly 60% of the vote, avoiding the need for a second round. The poll was a rerun of last year's controversial presidential election, in which international observers alleged fraud. Former left-wing FARC rebels in Colombia have begun a 10-day march to protest against the killings of demobilized guerrillas. It started the same day as thousands of anti-government demonstrators took part in a national strike in the capital, Bogotá. The FARC says more than 230 ex-rebels have been killed since a peace agreement was signed with the Colombian government in 2016. Archaeologists in China have uncovered 3 4,000-year-old tombs containing the human remains of what they believe were sacrificial victims. The graves are linked to the ancient settlement of Shimao in the northwestern province of Shanxi. Kat Wiener reports.
The archaeologists say the bones, all of which are female, show cut marks consistent with slaughter. They were buried alongside precious jade items, sets of pottery jars with stone lids and stone knives. The scientists say the findings could shed important light on the funeral customs and society of Shimao, the oldest known Neolithic settlement in China. Recent excavations of the vast site have uncovered other gruesome finds, including dozens of skulls buried in a pit under the walled city's central pyramid, as well as painted murals and stunning relief sculptures of serpents, monsters, and half-human creatures.
BBC News.
Many thanks indeed for the latest. Hello, welcome to Newsday with Lawrence and Bola. We're going to be hearing from the US, the latest from the election there, the campaign, before a presidential debate which is taking place a little later. President Obama has had his say. There's talk of Iranian and Russian interference. One of the people who blew the whistle on interference 4 years ago joins us to tell us what he thinks about it this time. Obviously, we're going to go to Nigeria next straight away for our top story. We talk to the scientists who are finding out how tough beetles are by driving over them. And we should say as well, one thing you might want to know, Matthew Kenyon's going to be with the sport for the last time. Our sports legend is off. He's going to get up not quite so early somewhere else for the rest of his life. We just thought you'd like to know. If you want to comment about anything, send us a text, WhatsApp message on anything you hear. The number is +44 77 86 20 50 85.
Let's start with that shooting in Lagos on Tuesday evening. It was as many youth gathered again at Lekki Tollgate to demand for the end of SARS just before a curfew that live shots rang out. Well, a number of people were left dead. Eyewitnesses says it was the army, and the rights group Amnesty International say at least 12 people were killed by soldiers and police. Well, Nigerians have demanded answers, and there's been a lot of anger and soul-searching. Nigeria's army dismissed the reports, though, as fake news in a post on Twitter, but they're increasing calls from inside and outside the country for the government to take action. Well, let's speak now to our correspondent, Ishaq Khalid, who joins us now. Morning to you, Ishaq. This is something that, many Nigerians I know have many Nigerians have lost, in fact, many Nigerians have lost sleep over the whole factor of demanding answers. We will be speaking to our correspondent later on this morning. But for now, let's hear from an interview that Ishaq actually conducted with the Minister for Police Affairs, Mohammed Maigali Dingyadi, for his reaction.
We all know how this thing started. It started peacefully. It started with genuine demands, but suddenly this thing has turned into something completely different. You cannot call a situation where properties, houses, buildings were burnt down. You cannot call it peaceful. Some people must have come out to take over these protests. We are continuing with the police reform and will continue to appeal to the protesters, and at the same time continue with the implementation of the demands that they have given to us.
But there are allegations that security forces fired at protesters, peaceful protesters. What would you say about this?
I cannot say actually who is involved in the shooting. There could be some miscreants who are having guns shooting people here and there. But definitely not the police, not the police.
But eyewitnesses said they saw soldiers.
They said they saw soldiers. Soldiers have already spoken about this. They are denying their involvement, and government is aware that they have not given any soldiers the instruction to go into this crisis, not at all.
Now there is widespread condemnation, international condemnation. We've seen some UN officials and also former Secretary of State of the United States, Hillary Clinton, condemning the use of force against protesters. What would you say about this international condemnation?
Well, what we want is for the entire world to come and see what is happening. Let people come and see by themselves what is happening in this country. What we started was a very peaceful demonstration carried out by innocent people who mean well for this country, who wanted to see to some positive changes in the police service in this country. But what is happening now and what we are having is a very chaotic situation where people are burning buildings, people are burning public properties, people are killing people. This is not how we started it. And we are suspecting, and very strongly too, that some people are coming in to take over this crisis and to get them back into something completely different.
When you say people should come and see what is happening instead of relying on what they hear, are you saying that the government is open to international investigation?
Oh, very well. We're open. Even yesterday, the Foreign Affairs Minister briefed the diplomats in this country as to what we are doing and to what we mean and where we are going, so that they understand us very well. We are open and we want people to come and see what is happening.
The issue of police brutality that these protesters are talking about has been lingering for so long. You yourself have said it. Why did the government allow it to linger and to reach this level?
It has been lingering long before we came. It is not this administration that has upset us. We only inherited the system and we are developing it. Like you know, in any system there are some few bad eggs that spoil systems, and that's what we are trying to correct now.
But you've been in power for the past 5 years or so. We have not seen any change in the conduct of the police before this protest.
No, not at all. We have been seeing and we have been talking and we have been doing our best to correct these mistakes. When it goes to a level, we have to listen to people and do the needful.
And that was the Minister for Police Affairs in Nigeria, Mohammed Maidari Dingyadi.
More coverage of that throughout the programme, of course. This is Lawrence Mbola with Newsday. Very warm welcome. Americans are busy arguing about the best ways to vote in the upcoming elections. Drop-off votes, postal votes, naked ballots, they're all explained on the BBC website. But we're also talking once again about foreign interference. This, of course, was one of the big stories in 2016. In 2020, security officials have just been raising the alarm. They say Iran and Russia have obtained US voter registration information in an effort to interfere in the poll. Now, this information is actually freely available in quite a lot of states, not all of them, but the Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, said the attempts include Iran using a far-right group that tried to actually send intimidating emails to voters. How that's going to work isn't quite explained and wasn't quite clear, so we turned for a little bit of illumination on this to Malcolm Nance. Malcolm is a security analyst in the US, was among the first former intelligence officers to raise the alarm 4 years ago over foreign interference in the US election. So what's going on in 2020?
I think that the claims are very serious. The question is, what's the level of seriousness from each of the two entities that they have attributed this to? Director Ratcliffe seemed to place a lot of emphasis on the Iranian. It's interesting because we know Russia has conducted a massive amount of interference in terms of information warfare, whereas Iran, we've really seen nothing.
Let's talk a little bit about the claims against Iran. They seem to be basically sending spoof emails which appear to come from the far-right group, the Proud Boys. Now, Ratcliffe was saying that this is designed to damage Donald Trump. How that's supposed to work?
It would only work in that instance if you consider the Proud Boys, which we consider a very virulent extremist street gang, part of your base constituency, and that by some foreign entity attacking them, that would actually hurt Donald Trump. However, that is minimal attempt at interference. We're not seeing very specific evidence because in this briefing it was quite broad and we didn't get anything other than the accusation.
In a sense, that's what the whole Cambridge Analytica business was all about, that adverts, that emails, that communications could be targeted by American political groups, you know, scare black voters, this kind of thing. This is foreigners doing it. Is this the right time to raise the flag about this kind of thing?
Well, it's certainly 4 years late in terms of raising the flag. Cambridge Analytica just did it for profit. They understood the power of data and the Trump data team in harvesting information. However, when you're looking at other foreign interference, it's also a question of magnifying messages, which is what the Russians were doing and what they have been doing since then, which is amplifying the number of messages that go out to your citizens. And that, of course, is disinformation warfare. That's where you literally change the mindset or hack the mindset of a segment of the population. And in the United States, we have 40% of this country will not believe any fact that doesn't come from Donald Trump as he presents it. And that shows the virulence of this warfare.
And when Democrats and some former intel officials as well come out and criticize this announcement by John Ratcliffe as electioneering, that doesn't help ordinary people and voters make sense of what's going on. Is this politically motivated, this latest warning?
If it had been John Ratcliffe, a man who is not even qualified to have even applied for that job, who himself just a few days ago came out and said there is no evidence of Russian intelligence being involved in the 2020 election, then you have to be very suspect of whatever he says. I think he was strong-armed by the FBI director, Wray, who, by seeing that there was a link to Iran, possibly, he could maneuver around Ratcliffe and manage to come out and say that it was Iran and Russia.
With claims about foreign interference, also all the claims that we're hearing about how the process itself, how postal voting might be hijacked and so on, do you think that the 2020 election is safer than 2016 was? Can you tell now?
You know, the American election system is very diverse. You cannot hack, little old ladies in Iowa with punch cards. I don't think anything will happen that will change the balance.
Malcolm Nance, security analyst, former intel officer as well, taking us through, well, it's a bit of a hall of mirrors there. Election coming up, of course, in just a few days.
Now, on the very last morning of sport with Matthew Kenyon. Matthew, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Bola. It is indeed. I'm off on my travels elsewhere. Kingsley Coman picked up where he left off for Bayern Munich last night as the scorer of their winner in last season's European Champions League final was on target twice in a 4-0 win over Atletico Madrid in their first game of the new campaign. Bad night all round for Madrid. Real coach Zinedine Zidane said his team lacked confidence after a shock 3-2 home defeat at the hands of illness-depleted Shakhtar Donetsk. Both teams could play better football was Jurgen Klopp's verdict on Liverpool's scrappy 1-0 away win at Ajax. Their winner was an own goal, and the Tampa Bay Rays have levelled baseball's World Series with a 6-4 victory over the LA Dodgers in Game 2 of their best-of-7 contest.
Thank you very much, Matthew.
Right, time for Andrew Wood and the business on the line from Hong Kong. South Africa is your top story. Defence company running out of cash. What's going wrong?
Well, this is Denel. This is the state-owned arms company, armaments company, which was founded basically many years ago under apartheid. But it's saying that the chief executive has been talking to Parliament and saying that the company really needs about $168 million over the next 5 years in order basically to keep going. I mean, it's running out of cash. I mean, it's been running out of cash for a long time now. I mean, it's been close to collapse, people have been saying, for a couple of years. It's been looking for a partner, perhaps, to invest in it, in shares. That hasn't worked out. It's had corruption problems. It's got links to the Gupta family. So there's an awful lot of things there that that Denel has had to cope with. Now it's basically asking. I think it's probably going to be asking for money from the government. A bit like many of the big companies in state-owned companies in South Africa, which were in difficulties before COVID came along, and are in further difficulties today.
How big is it? Is it too big to save, too big to fail?
It's not enormous by the standards of, say, Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, Airbus, or any of these, giant arms companies. It's quite small in global terms, but it still does employ, it's estimated, around 15,000 people. And that's an awful lot of jobs in South Africa, and a lot of high-skilled jobs, and they're worrying that already some of their most skilled people are beginning to leave.
OK, fascinating. Many thanks indeed. Andrew Wood with the business on the line from Hong Kong, and Matthew Kenyon with the sport before that. This is Newsday from the BBC World Service.
Good morning, this is BBC Radio 4, rested and ready to begin a new day's broadcasting thanks to our World Service colleagues who've been minding the airwaves while we had a lie down. And rather than counting sheep, we've been counting the cost of sheepdogs. Later this hour, hearing from a Welsh farmer who spent £20,000 on one. On that bombshell, I think I need some fresh air.
Open Country on BBC Radio 4.
Often in the village we all used to go fishing with sticks out of the hedge and fishing line probably the width of rope.
Celebrating the connection between people and places across Britain. And we start our new series, plunging into the depths of ghost ponds.
We put the headphones on for the first time. We both looked at each other, just totally amazed.
We discover that where there's sound, there's life.
Even plants make sounds underwater. It's like listening to a jungle.
The return of Open Country on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds this afternoon at 3.
And now it's a welcome return for Matt Taylor.
Thank you very much, Chris. Good morning, all. Now, the shipping forecast issued by the Met Office on behalf of the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency at 05:05 on Thursday, the 22nd of October.